Arajine is a risless virgin loser who can't even talk to a girl. However, everything changes when he accidentally summons a demon who helps take his revenge and clap the baddie he wants. It all starts when Arajine arrives at his new school where the teacher explains that two gangs are fighting for control. Instead of caring about it, he only asks whether there were any cute girls in his class. When he finally walks into the classroom, it's packed with grimy troublemakers and rowdy students who completely ignore his introduction. Then, he spots an absolute goddess sitting in the classroom, makes him fall head over heels instantly. He sits next to her and learns her name is Mahoro, which sends him into full Gunner panic mode. After class, Mahoro asks if he wants to walk home together, and Arajine's neurons quickly go on strike, thinking he's about to get lucky, so he rushes to meet her at the gates. His classmates stop him, though, because it turns out they're part of Minato Kai, the top gang at school. Arajine finds them intimidating and books it while they chase him down. He crashes straight into another Minato Kai member, and his classmates tell him that the idiot had run into their best fighter. However, the guy recognizes him, and it's Matakara, Arajine's childhood friend, who trained with him to become Honky people. Matakara introduces Arajine to his gang, hyping him up as this tough dude, but everyone's looking at Arajine like he is powered by low self-esteem, with expired personality he is. Matakara invites him to hang out, but Arajine's in a rush and bolts to the gate only to find Mahoro already left. The next day in history class, Arajine notices Mahoro's absent, and the following day he sits with her asking why she was playing hooky, but she brushes it off, so he apologizes for not showing up at the gate yesterday. However, she's cool about it and asks if he's free Saturday, and Arajine instantly becomes a lovesick fool and hits his bad button. Matakara interrupts them, calling out to Arajine. His gangmates are still skeptical about Arajine being tough, but Matakara keeps defending him. Later, Arajine hits up a store and decides to buy a stone, but then his classmates show up for some video games, apologizing for being harsh with him earlier, and he agrees to play with them. He's about to cop a battle royale when his classmates spot a group of guys approaching and decide to bounce. Arajine wins but gets surrounded by the group who ask if he's in a gang. He denies it, but they do not play around about their turf, so Arajine starts running through the streets in nothing but his crusty underwear while his classmates laugh, thinking Matakara was totally wrong about him. He escapes to the shrine, but the group keeps chasing him. He spots a gun on the ground and threatens to shoot them. They laugh thinking it's a toy and keep approaching. He fires the weapon but misses, and the bullet bounces off the wall hitting his head. The guys run away thinking he's sent to spectator mode, but Arajine realizes he's still alive with the bullet stuck to his face. When he tries to remove it, he summons a genie named Senya who asks about his wish. Arajine's wish is to get lucky with the baddies, so Senya offers to merge with him, but Arajine refuses, so Senya just follows him around, and only Arajine can see him, while his classmates tell Matakara what happened, calling him pathetic, but Matakara defends him, saying he's gentle, so he avoids conflict. Sometime later, Arajine meets up with Mahoro and they spend time together. Senya advises him to make his move, so Arajine decides to seize the moment, but suddenly, which always happens to him at crucial moments. He returns and gives Mahoro the stone with her name carved on it. She doesn't seem impressed, but he calls it a love forever stone and is about to confess when they get surrounded by the Sigma gang as Marito approaches them. Arajine tries to leave with Mahoro, but she asks Arajine if he's willing to fight for her, but Marito reveals that he's Mahoro's brother and is pissed because Arajine touched her. Just then, Matakara sees Arajine in trouble and rushes to help. There, Arajine takes a beating and thinks he's about to die, but Mahoro's actually enjoying watching her brother fight for her. Senya considers abandoning Arajine, thinking merging would be a bad idea, but then he hears Arajine refuse to back down, which gets Senya excited. Arajine gets fired up and tells Senya that he wants to do the horizontal tango with a chick and finally decides to merge with him. Matakara spots Arajine and Marito fighting, so she rushes through the crowd. Suddenly, Arajine unleashes Senya's power. He lands a power-packed punch on Marito, launching him into the planet like a piece of paper carried by wind. Seeing this, Matakara is starstruck and deduces that Arajine is almost like a honky person. Marito, however, gets up with a visible punch mark on his abdomen and seems more excited than ever about the fight, while Arajine fights with Senya, who tells him that he used the wrong call sign by saying that he doesn't want to die a virgin. As Arajine is busy arguing, Marito rushes in with a sneak kick with full force that bounces Arajine off the map and into the river, where Matakara emphatically rushes in to save him from drowning. Marito wins the bout and everyone goes home with Matakara taking Arajine back to his place at the bathhouse run by his relatives. When Marito wakes up, he confusingly asks Matakara about Mahoro, who he thinks is offended since he folded her brother like that in front of her. But Matakara tells him to his surprise that he didn't win, rather he got his bottom whooped into the river. Matakara shows Arajine the stone with their names stamped on it that Arajine gave him years ago and then asks Arajine if he stopped hanging out with him because he was weak, to which Arajine replies that it was all so long ago that he doesn't remember and that he wants to leave now. Otomi stands outside the cat club, and when he sees some of his students approach, he rushes into the club where the attendant asks him who he wants today, to which he replies that he wants Jasmine, who he starts talking to like an idiot. Arajine goes to the bath, and there he talks about how he felt a surge of power while fighting Marito and that he felt like it's a rental power-up, at which point he asks Senya what he really is, to which Senya replies that he is a true Honky person or something close to it. Arajine asks if it's just a legend, and Senya tells him to remember how he felt when he threw that one punch, and the reason he couldn't do more is because they weren't merged together, so they should totally do it, which will make Arajine more powerful. Arajine asks Senya why he wants to merge with him so badly, and Senya says that men sometimes have feelings that don't let them sleep at night, which is why they should merge at the hip, which makes Arajine yet from the mouth and tell him off. Mahoro simps for Marito and asks him if he's doing alright, to which he replies in the affirmative and asks her to stop worrying, but she keeps asking. As Marito sits on his metaphorical throne, Nagare and his side character friend come in and ask him if he intends on recruiting Arajine into his organization, to which Marito says that he even wants to recruit Matakara, who seems pretty darn strong as well. The next day at school, Arajine is faced with a large group of boys simping over his strength, but he only wants the hose. Kakeru asks Matakara why he wants to induct Arajine into Minato since he is such a little wimp, and because he also saw some weird thing with him which he doesn't know is Senya. Matakara dismisses that and tells him that Arajine is like a Honky person and that after all, Ken himself wants to meet Arajine, which shocks Kakeru. At the school, Arajine throws a throat tantrum at Senya, not realizing that no one else can see him, causing a disruption in the class. Marito is roaming around the school looking for Arajine, and when Matakara asks him what business he has with Arajine, Marito tells him that he wants to recruit him to his own organization, which surprises Matakara. Marito enters into Arajine's class to find him and extends his invitation, after which Arajine goes out to simp for Mahoro, who doesn't want anything to do with him at all, thinking of him as some weird rock guy as she only wants to be around her brother. When Arajine sits with her and tells her that he would like to fight her brother again, she tells him that he'll be meeting his maker if he does that. She pulls out the Love Forever stone he gave her and throws it down where it breaks on impact like Arajine's stupid heart. Mahoro goes to see her brother but finds him asleep, which makes her tomato red, and as she goes towards him, he punches in his dream and ends up hitting her while calling Arajine's name, which pisses her off. Arajine sits at his desk trying sheepishly to rejoin the pieces of the broken like a mad sloth while Senya tells him to get himself together. Matakara pens a letter to his brother telling him that he wants to train hard with Arajine to become a Honky person and that he's anxiously waiting for the day that he gets released from juvie so they can be together again. At school the next day, Matakara tries to recruit Arajine to Minato through multi-level marketing while Nagare tries for Saguma, but they end up throwing hands instead of sales pitches. Initially, Nagare dodges all of Matakara's attacks, and they seem equally matched throughout the fight, but at the end they both go in for the headbutt, and Nagare falls down before Matakara, who is about to fall when Arajine rushes in to save him. Arajine compliments him at being good and is about to leave when Matakara asks him to join Minato Kai and meet Ken, who's incredibly strong, to which he agrees. They meet Ken and Arajine immediately asks Ken to fight him so that he can beat him instead of Marito to show Mahoro how strong he is. He gets a power uber from Senya and lands a punch on Ken that sends him to the loading screen, but then gets distracted with Senya, which allows Ken to land a blow that launches him like a bad DLC. But Ken is impressed and tells them that he's in. The next day at school, Arajine thinks that he won against Ken, but Senya gives him a reality check. Just then, Marito comes crashing through the window and asks Arajine to join Saguma, but Arajine hesitates only to see Mahoro asking him to do it, at which point he melts and agrees. Matakara runs in to ask him to join Minato, but is told by Marito that Arajine is part of Saguma now. Matakara is shocked to see Arajine join Saguma when it looked like he was about to join Minato, but Marito tells him that Arajine is one of them now, and that if he wants to take him back, he'll have to fight for it. Matakara tries to ask Arajine, but he remains silent as Marito takes him away with him. Tatsuto explains the history of Saguma to Arajine, telling him that it used to be called Iki, but when Ken sent their boss flying off the map, the organization went into decline until Marito took control of its reins and brought it back to prominence, so now they are also competing for the top spot along with Minato Kai. Hearing this makes Senya a bit too excited as he jumps from his seat while Arajine is sleepy and has mentally ghosted them because he joined Saguma just for Mahoro. So, when Marito asks him to go out with them, he immediately complies, and as they walk together and Marito sings Suguma's praises, Nagare warns Arajine to not get carried away. Arajine asks Marito where they're headed, and he tells them that this is his welcoming party where he will be spoiled with his moral taking a day off, but Arajine only wants Mahoro. When they see a group of NG boys trying to rob someone from their school, Marito confronts them and they pull out knives telling him that they have to meet the Emperor's quota. Marito explains that Akataru, who was dismissed from Minato, has taken over this organization as emperor, and to everybody's amazement he proceeds to whoop their bottoms with a message to Akataru to stay in his limits. Matakara approaches Mahoro to ask her if she's the one that got Arajine to join Suguma, but she puts him on read and keeps moving, prompting him to grab her arm, which pisses her off as she tells him to let go. When he doesn't oblige, she screams at him and runs away, calling him a weird blockhead. Marito takes Arajine to his party venue where all the other members of Suguma are gathered to celebrate his induction, but Arajine can't see any hoes there for whom he's actually waiting. Then Marito tells him that they're going to play a game called Turn Around, which Arajine thinks is silly and childish, but when the game starts and Aota logs out the person next to him, Arajine and Senya finally understand that debating actually meant punchery. The game goes on and everyone is knocked out, so Marito asks Arajine to join in, but he tries to wriggle out of it, so Marito picks him up and puts him in the game. Arajine begs Senya to merge with him, which hesitates at first, but seeing how Arajine is a support sponge, he agrees. Nagare tries to go in first, but Aota wants the first round with Tatsuto serving as referee. The match begins and it's Aota's turn to throw the punch. As Aota punches Arajine, he wants to dodge, but Senya holds his head together and he takes the punch head on, which fractures Aota's hand, shocking everyone as Marito is the only one who can take Aota's punch, which can even break through concrete. The next fight is with Nagare, who is super excited to destroy Arajine once and for all, but he loses the rock paper scissors and it's Arajine's turn to throw a punch. Arajine doesn't want to face Marito in the final, so he decides to throw a light punch and even gets mentally tabbed out mid-blow, but ends up turning Nagare's face, who goes nuts on losing. Marito jumps into the ring and the final match is started by Tatsuto, with Marito aggressively playing his hand for rock, papers, and scissors, but Arajine holds his tummy and Tatsuto has to give him a toilet break so his wimp bottom can relieve themselves. As Arajine opens the toilet door, he is surprised to find Aota all beaten up and bloody falling in front of him unconscious, which stops the match as they all focus on who beat him up. They find a Minato Kaiban next to him and blame them, but Marito says that this is not Ken's style of operating, so he wouldn't do that, which makes Nagare apologize to him for being rash. As they walk back, Arajine asks Tatsuto to some clarification, so Tatsuto explains to him, Aota and Marito are old friends who started fighting together at an early age, so they're war buddies, and no one in the entire city except Ken is strong enough to beat Aota, so it's quite a mystery how Aota got sent to the void and bloodied like that. Arajine goes back to his restaurant to find Mahoro sitting there waiting for him to thank him for joining Suguma, but he tells her that he got smacked today, so he is considering leaving the organization, which makes her give him some palm therapy. She tells him that her brother might make him the leader and retire himself, for which Arajine will have to beat him in battle so that she can spend more time with him. She makes a heart sign for Arajine, which makes him all wobbly, and he says yes in order to win her affection with Yayako, sheepishly wondering how far along Mahoro and Arajine are. Arajine trains in his room later on and tells Senya that he wants to improve their merge rate, which makes Senya very happy, and he makes them both play flutes together so that they can establish harmony, which will improve their merging rate. Nagare and Tatsuto see some Minato boys while they're walking back, and after some clapback tennis, they get into a fight where Nagare knocks them all out, but as he leaves, NG goons come in and beat up the Minato members. The next day at school, Arajine and Matakara partner up and stretch each other, with Matakara reminiscing of older days and asking Arajine to drop Suguma even if Mahoro has asked him to remain in it, but Arajine tells him that Mahoro wants him to take over from Marito instead. As they yap, some people come and tell Matakara that some Suguma members have done something, so he rushes off with them to find that some Minato members have been mopped, folded, and tied to a post. This pisses off all of them, and Kamau, along with others, round up some Suguma members and cook them up with the NG goons watching. Marito finds them stripped and beaten up with a picture saying that he is next, prompting him to go to Ken's place and ask for him to come out, which he does as they face off. Meanwhile, Minato and Suguma members are outside at each other's throats trying to beat each other up. Inside, Marito launches a kick at Ken, but Matakara blocks it, but then Marito hurls another kick at him, which makes Matakara lose signal to reality. Akataru asks Nagare to tell them the reason for being there, to which Nagare sheepishly says that he should figure that out himself. Akataru tells Nagare how Minato men were beaten up by Suguma goons and left with their pride in the bargain bin, to which Nagari angrily replies that they are the ones who started all this by beating, tying up and then hoisting their men to poles in a show of extreme humiliation and war. Matakara shouts for them to stop fighting because Minato's members did not do the things they were being accused of, and Marito knows that. But Marito, being stubborn as an old bull, announces that he wants the perpetrators to be produced in the Coliseum tomorrow, or there will be war between the two groups and he will settle his scores with Ken. Arajine walks through the corridors while practicing his punches, with everyone looking at his idiot actions with bewilderment. Arajine happily tells Senya that they will defeat Marito, but then remembers that Mahoro had told him not to harm her brother either, so he asks Senya how he's supposed to defeat him without leaving a mark on his face, to which Senya responds that he can punch him in the belly, something that Arajine totally agrees with. When Arajine goes to Suguma headquarters to try and face off against Marito, he senses a very tense environment with lots of members present, at which point Tatsuto grabs him and pulls him away. He explains to Arajine how both groups are now at war with each other because of what happened between them, and that if the war persists, there will be a lot of unwanted free blood donation events, to which Senya dances around in happiness, calling it festivities, but Arajine wants no part of it. Matakara, Kakeru, and Komayo sit and eat together while discussing the impending war, which worries Matakara, prompting Kakeru to ask if he's a diplomat, in denial, to which he says no, but Minato has always been about the idea of one-on-one combat and not gang-style fighting. He looks at a Minato uniform hanging at the wall, and the other two ask if that's Mitsukuni's uniform, who is the leader of Minato before Ken and someone they all look up to. Komao asks if he's getting out of juvie soon, to which Matakara replies in the affirmative and gets up to buzz off, citing something important he has to do. Komao feasts on the extra meat he's got now and asks Kakeru where his uniform and armband went to, which he says that he hung them out and some crowd took it away, which prompts a skeptical Komao to open the window and volume attack a bunch of crows. Kakeru remembers how Akataru approached him the other day and introduced himself, but Kakeru wanted nothing to do with him, not even shaking his hand when he offered it. Akataru tells him to be nice, but Kakeru calls him a small fish of no consequence, after which Akataru pulls him towards himself and kicks him to the ground after beating him up like a rag doll before taking his armband as well and mouth-slapping him, but Kakeru is too embarrassed to tell anyone about it. Senya asks Arajine what he intends to do for the fight, to which he replies that he won't need to fight because Marito and Ken will be fighting each other. In his made-up scenario, if Marito defeats Ken, he will feel like he has accomplished everything and hand over Suguma's reins to him, which will earn him Mahoro's acceptance, and if Marito loses, he will accept defeat and still hand over the top slot to Arajine, who will ensure him that he can lead. Suguma? Well, in this case, Mahoro will go emotionally bankrupt and take to drinking, but he will ride in like a half-knight from the clearance aisle and still score her love with her. Arajine, still daydreaming, gets home to find Matakara in the restaurant, who asks him if he'll be fighting Minato tomorrow, but Arajine says that he will see. Matakara asks him to talk some sense into Marito and stop him from going to war, but Arajine says it's not his job to do so. And when Matakara reminds him of how they used to friends and he stood by him, Arajine gets worked up and uninstalls Matakara from his house, while Senya later keeps asking why. Arajine did that, to which he gets no reply. The next day, Arajine rushes over to Mahoro to tell her that after the fight tomorrow, when her big brother wins, he will retire and hand over the reins to him, which makes her tell him that then she won't need him anymore, which confuses and scares his wimpy self. Just as they're talking, Matakara comes around and tells Mahoro that he wants to talk to her about her brother, so she goes with him to the hallway where he tells her that there's going to be a war tomorrow and she needs to tell her brother to stop or else it will lead to a lot of violence. But Mahoro says that she can't do anything and begins to leave, at which point Matakara holds her hand and puts another hand on her mouth to prevent her from screaming. Arajine sees all this, being the peeping Tom he is, and freaks out over what he thinks is both of them hugging each other. Matakara mentions that they might delete each other, which worries Mahoro, but she tells him that even if she tries telling Marito, he won't listen to her hearing, which Matakara tells her that she can at least convince Arajine to talk to Marito, but she doubts Arajine's ability to convince her brother. However, Matakara assures her that it will work and then lets her go, apologizing for holding her. Mahoro goes to him as if she is the last comfort pillow on earth and emotionally blackmails him into going to Marito and stopping the war, which he promptly agrees to and runs off to Suguma headquarters. Upon getting there, however, he finds a very serious-looking Marito and he can't muster up the courage to talk to him, so he just beats about the bush until Marito shoves a kebab in his face. Kakeru comes clean to Matakara about Akataru being behind all this, so Matakara goes after him. Arajine runs into Akataru, who begins to pick a fight with him using his weapon, so Arajine merges with Senya and they punch him around until he gets gravity checked and Ichia's presence becomes apparent to Senya, who is shocked. Workers from the NG group work hard to make weapons out of metal pipes for the war under Akataru's order. Matakara suddenly barges in and they ask him who he is. He introduces himself as a member of Minato and demands to see the Emperor, at which the workers attack him and he kicks them into orbit right there. Akataru comes out to face Matakara, and Matakara asks him about his involvement in starting the war between the two groups, at which point Akataru calls for Arajine, who comes out like he just pawned his dignity for pocket change, which shocks Matakara as he asks Arajine what's going on, and Arajine tells him that he's playing the king's game. Akataru denies any involvement in the scheme that Matakara accuses him of, so Matakara decides to fight him right there despite Arajine trying to stop him. Matakara attacks Akataru with a kick, which he blocks with his whip, and also blocks further advances by Matakara before kicking Matakara in the belly to turn him into a speed bump, which makes Senya sure that this is indeed Ichia's work and that Akataru has Ichiya inside of him. When Matakara opens his eyes, he finds himself tied up in a storeroom in the NG headquarters, where Arajine comes to see how he's doing, and Matakara asks him what he's doing hanging out with a chump like Akataru, and that too without his clothes. Arajine tells him how he punched the daylights out of Akataru, and then Akataru asked him if he wanted to do something about that virgin bottom of his, to which he agreed and went with him to a nightclub that also doubles as the NG headquarters. There he was entertained by a bunch of women who had charm and gravity, with dangerous curves, who danced around for him and stimulated his sensual side, but unfortunately it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. Matakara is shocked and he asks Arajine about doing something about the impending war, but Arajine is least bothered as fights like that happen all the time. But Matakara says that it's a rigged fight and not a real one, which pisses of Arajine as Matakara tells him that he was more into becoming Honky person. But Arajine shuts him up as Akataru comes and takes him away after noticing their special relationship. As Arajine slithers out like a snake, he remembers an incident from years ago when they were young and training together. They were approached by a group of older guys who made fun of Honky people that really made Matakara angry, and he attacked them but was beaten up due to being a small child, while Arajine hid behind and watched his friend get flattened into a human pancake. When the guys turned their attention towards Arajine, he ran away like a rabbit instead of facing them, leaving Matakara all alone in the dirt. This memory makes him feel bad, and he tries to block it out as Akataru takes him to center stage where all the NG guys have gathered to see him. Akataru introduces Arajine as being from Seguma, but he's not happy there because of Marito's idiot leadership, so Akataru invites Arajine to join the NG boys, but Arajine says that he would like to know more about them as he oogles out the busty chicks of the group. Akataru tells him that the motto of the NG is E, which stands for energy, and joy, ecstasy, and emperor, all of which Arajine finds weird and dumb, while the NG members clap and shout like crazy baboons as if scared of Akataru. Then Akataru delivers an address to his people saying that the fight between the two groups is about to begin and they will rush in during it to wipe them all out of existence. This alarms Arajine, who finally believes Matakara now, but when Akataru asks him to accompany him, he sheepishly agrees and goes with him, completely ignoring Matakara, who keeps yowling like a stray cat to warn him. As they walk towards the fight, Akataru suddenly gets on his knees and asks Arajine to his number 2, but Arajine refuses, so he makes him the tempting offer of getting to fool around with the big melon NG girls all he wants, which excites and tempts Arajine, but he remembers Mahoro, hence refusing Akataru's offer to join up. Arajine, however, does ask Akataru why he wants to delete all those people, so he tells Arajine of how years ago Ken protected him from a bunch of thugs, and he was so impressed with Ken's power that he joined up Minato after training hard for a long time and getting so strong that he was able to smash even Outa. However, when Outa refused to give up, he pulled out his stick and tried to hit him, which Ken blocked. For this stupidity, Ken kicks out Akataru from Minato, and that's when he vows to flatten out anyone who stood in his path for revenge. Ken and Marito face each other while Kakeru anxiously looks at the time, waiting for Matakara to show up, but when he doesn't, he himself goes to find out what's happened to him. In the meantime, Akataru and the NG boys, along with Arajine, have also gathered to see the fight and then smash them all with their weapons, which Senya finds disgusting. Kakeru goes to the NG headquarters and finds Matakara, who tells him about the Akataru's plan, so they both rush back to the arena, while Akataru tries to seduce Arajine into joining the NG boys by telling him that after they defeated Marito, they can take his little sister captive as a trophy girl for display, where he will use her to service him and amuse him, even eventually passing her on to Arajine like a free trial that just expired. As Arajine hears this, he holds his bottom tightly to prevent his stuff from leaking and forces Senya into him, getting all his power to land a mighty big punch on Akataru before running off to the toilet. The impact of the punch confirms Akataru and Ichiya's suspicion that Arajine has Senya inside him. Ken and Marito move towards each other to fight, and both their respective sides also move towards each other to begin the carnage, but as they're about to engage, Matakara comes in between and tells them how it's all a setup. By the end, and Kakeru tells them that Akataru stole his armband to fool them all. Both sides refuse to believe them, but when Arajine comes running with the whole NG behind him, they come to their senses about the reality of the situation. But Ken and Marito don't care what the truth is and lunge to fight each other. The war erupts as Ken and Marito charge straight at each other, completely tuning out Matakara's attempts to explain the setup. Fists start flying from every direction, and the whole place descends into madness. In the chaos, Arajine tries to slip away but trips and falls to the ground. Meanwhile, the NG boys stand back watching the clash between Ken and Marito, a single spark that ignites total, all-out chaos as everyone dives headfirst into the brawl. From a distance, Auda watches the madness unfold. In a flashback, Marito and Auda first enter the academy as the legendary God Kings, the students who absolutely dominated the city while at his old school. Everyone knew their reputation. Auda considered joining one of the top gangs, but Marito wasn't interested in any of that political BS. Some AA union member tried to intimidate Auda, thinking he could flex on him, but Auda punched the poor guy so hard he needed a calendar to find his way, and Marito just casually walked over the guy's body. Auda noted that Marito seemed burned out after they became top dogs in school. He wanted to find someone who could reignite that fire in Marito again. Another union member approached them trying to recruit them. Later, Marito and Auda spotted the union leader Shiba challenging Ken to a fight. Ken easily demolished him, and Minato Kai celebrated, thinking the union was finished. But Marito suddenly charged in, trying to attack Ken, who managed to defend himself and push Marito back, getting excited when he realized Ken was actually a worthy opponent. But then Ken just walked away, leaving Marito confused about why he wouldn't continue fighting. With Shiba defeated, the union members begged Marito to become their new leader, but he didn't care about leading them but wanted to know why Ken refused to fight him. They explained that Ken only fights people with real conviction, and that he'd fight Marito if he became the union leader, but only then. At Minato Kai headquarters, Auda approached Ken, challenging him to a fight while claiming he was the new union leader. Everyone gathered to watch as Auda attacked Ken with a devastating blow. Ken took it like a good boy and easily defeated Auda, but as he was about to leave, Marito approached Auda. Auda told Marito he was their only hope, revealing he'd planned everything just so Marito could have the fight he always wanted, but all he cared about was seeing some excitement. Marito tried attacking Ken, who attempted to stop him, but Marito overpowered him with a powerful kick. Everyone was shocked to see this, and Ken got genuinely excited. They started exchanging blows in an epic battle that ended in a draw. Auda was thrilled that Marito had finally returned to his old self, having found his match. Ken refused to graduate from school because he was waiting for Marito to defeat him. Back in the present, Ken and Marito continue their intense fight while Mahoro watches nervously, thinking her brother might be in trouble. Arajine tells her to be careful, but she demands he stop the fight. He tries talking to them, but they're both channeling their inner Joestar and completely ignore him. Both fighters attack with everything they have, managing to hit each other simultaneously. The impact releases a massive shockwave that shatters the ground beneath them. Everyone's stunned by the display of power, but they realize both Marito and Ken are unconscious from the exchange. Mahoro checks on Marito while Arajine wonders if they should call an ambulance. But then Mahoro drops the bombshell and tells him she's done with him, leaving Arajine even more pathetic than before. Shindo arrives with the NG boys, ordering them to attack. Everyone realizes they're behind this whole mess and prepares to fight back. Senya gets excited because he wants to battle Ichiya, telling Arajine they should join the fight, but Arajine starts walking away, saying nothing matters anymore since Mahoro rejected him. Senya tells him his friends are fighting for their lives, asking if he's really going to abandon them. However, Arajine coldly responds that they aren't even his homies. Senya is disappointed in him, but as Arajine tries to leave, Shindo blocks his path and asks about Senya. Arajine's surprised that Shindo knows about the genie. Shindo starts attacking him, knocking him down, and tells him to merge with Senya if he doesn't want to die. Senya urges Arajine to merge because Shindo's going to end him, but Arajine thinks he has no reason left to live since Mahoro rejected him. Matakara realizes Arajine is in trouble and gets distracted, allowing an NG boy to hit his leg and injure him. More NG boys approach, ready to finish him off as Shindo continues beating down Arajine, thinking he was completely wrong about him because he is a total lightweight moron. Realizing his men are losing, Shindo Shindo decides to join the fight himself, revealing he planned everything. He thanks everyone for destroying each other. This pisses everyone off and Soji tries attacking him, but Shindo counters and knocks him down as Zabu charges in, but Shindo dodges his attacks and easily takes him out. He challenges everyone to gang up on him and attacks them with his whip. Jabashiri manages to close the distance, trying to land a headbutt, but Shindo strikes his head and easily defeats him. He's demolishing everyone until Matakara lands a powerful kick that breaks his neck, but it just snaps back into place like some F-tier horror movie nonsense, and he starts going ham on Matakara. Arajine sees this and recalls the moment Matakara was attacked by bullies. Senya asks if he's going to let his friend die, but Arajine doesn't respond. Senya becomes frustrated because he wants to defeat Ichiya. Shindo lands a devastating kick, knocking Matakara down. Matakara tries to fight back but suddenly collapses. Shindo realizes he's the last man standing and thinks about torturing everyone, but Mahoro approaches him and tells him to get lost. He attacks her and Arajine sees this, realizing she's in trouble. He tells her to run, but she refuses to back down, saying she isn't afraid of Shindo, but she clocks him by calling him an NPC, which really pisses him off. He's about to end her life when everyone's shocked to see Arajine stop him, and Shindo tells Arajine to give up, launching a combination of attacks, but Arajine completely endures it. Shindo attacks with everything he has, but Arajine isn't backing down. Senya realizes their merge rate is off the charts. Arajine throws a punch, but Shindo dodges and tries a counterattack. Arajine blocks it and everyone starts cheering for him as he overpowers Shindo, leaving him wide open. Then Arajine punches him with all his might, sending him flying. Shindo tries to get back up, but he's completely exhausted. Everyone celebrates Arajine's victory. Senya is surprised because he wasn't expecting Arajine to win, knowing Shindo is possessed by Ichiya. Arajine approaches Mahoro asking if she's okay, but she doesn't respond. Everyone clings to him, thinking he's amazing. Marito and Ken regain consciousness, and Matakara tells Arajine he always believed in him. But Arajine doesn't care and starts walking away until he realizes Matakara is injured, so he helps him and tells him it's time to go home. Arajine returns home battered and bruised, where his overprotective mom realizes he's in terrible shape and wonders if he got into a fight, but he refuses to say anything. He takes a shower while Senya mentions he was wrong about Arajine and that he's proven himself to be a great fighter. But Arajine mentions he only cares about Mahoro, wondering how Shindo found out about Senya. Arajine walks around campus as Senya tells him he's finally awakened his inner Honky. Senya thinks he's worthy to become Marito's successor, so Mahoro is going to fall in love with him. But when he enters the classroom, she isn't there. Soji approaches him, saying he's an amazing fighter. Matakara appears and tells him Mahoro is at the hospital watching over Marito. Hearing this, Arajine rushes to get to her with Matakara joining him. Matakara reveals that Mitsukuni is in juvenile detention because he assaulted a cop who was forcing his friends to sell drugs. Matakara recalls that Mitsukuni wants him to become a Honky person, which is why he isn't giving up on his dream, so he mentions Mitsukuni is getting released next week, and Arajine's happy to hear this. At the hospital, Mahoro is looking after Marito with food that looks absolutely disgusting. She's about to feed him, but he doesn't want to eat it, so he grabs her arm, making her flustered. Arajine enters the room, but Mahoro gets upset, wondering what he's doing there. Marito greets him, saying he wants to leave the hospital, but Mahoro tells Arajine to leave because he isn't part of their family. Marito tells her to leave instead, and she runs away. Arajine chases after her, but she stops him, reminding him that he was a pathetic virgin before walking away. Arajine gets flustered, somehow thinking she likes him. Marito congratulates him for winning against Shindo and invites him to a group date. Arajine immediately agrees to join. Tatsuto tells Arajine about the event, explaining that Minato Kai will be joining Sigma. This upsets Arajine because he thinks Matakara is going to ruin his chance to clap Mahoro. Tatsuto tells him everyone heard about his recent victory, so he's going to become popular. They're having the event at the beach where Mahoro will be wearing a swimsuit, which gets Arajine tingly in the nether regions. At Matakara's house, Soji is training, saying he's inspired by Arajine. Matakara mentions Arajine was like a honky person, and everyone's looking forward to the group date. But Zabu isn't in the mood, saying he feels like he owes Arajine something. Arajine flexes his muscles, thinking he's going to get lucky tomorrow, but Senya humbles him by calling him a weak twink. His mother comments that his arm looks cute. That evening, Arajine tells Senya he feels like a real man. The next day, Arajine heads to the beach and realizes they're having a group combat date. For the first match, out of fights against Ken, they start grappling, but Ken suddenly stops moving, and Tatsuto realizes Ken's back is broken after violent backshots. Both fighters collapse and need medical attention. Zabu approaches Arajine, saying he's looking forward to their fight. Arajine realizes he's one of the fighters and becomes devastated, knowing he won't see Mahoro in a swimsuit. Soji forces his opponent to surrender, but Marito enters the ring and blows him away. Mahoro takes pictures of him, thinking he's like a godly Isekai protagonist. Meanwhile, the NG boys are slaving away and preparing food for everyone. Shindo isn't happy and asks Ichiya for advice. Arajine is surprised to see him and asks why he knows about Senya, but he refuses to answer. Matakara fights and secures victory, impressing everyone because he's already eliminated 7 fighters. Zabu gets instantly defeated while Marito crushes his opponents. Arajine realizes Matakara is the only fighter left in Minato Kai, thinking he doesn't need to fight. But Marito tells him to be Matakara's partner since they're having a tag team match for the final round. Arajine is against this, but Matakara doesn't mind, so Arajine falls into despair, and Senya tells him he should rely on his own strength. Tatsuto begins the fight. Arajine tells Matakara to take the lead but doesn't plan to help if he gets into trouble. Matakara starts grappling with Jabashiri and they appear evenly matched. Arajine cheers for him but sees Mahoro telling Marito to tag in. He decides to fight, wanting to show her what he's made of, but gets intimidated and pretends he has a leg cramp, telling Matakara to fight Marito instead. Marito starts beating Matakara up, but he refuses to give up and gets caught in a submission move. Arajine wants Matakara to give up, thinking the fight doesn't matter, but Matakara breaks free and lands a counterattack. Everyone's impressed by his resolve, but Marito's nose starts bleeding, surprising everyone. Marito gets serious, launching Matakara into the air. Arajine mentions Marito's favorite food, causing him to get distracted and fall. He suddenly starts attacking Arajine, so Tatsuto tries to stop him but gets knocked down. Marito starts looking for his favorite food while going berserk. Jabashiri tries to land a headbutt, but Matakara slams him against the ground, knocking him out. Marito throws Arajine away, and he lands on Jabashiri, pinning him by accident and clapping his ops. Everyone celebrates, but Marito becomes frustrated and destroys the tent. After the event, Matakara tells Arajine he had a great time, but Arajine doesn't want to do it again. Matakara says he fights like a honky person. A camel walks past them, and Arajine sees Mahoro riding it, so he chases after her. But Shindo is watching them with Ichiya. In the temple, a young Matakara stands with his brother, and he asks him about the picture in front of them, and he's told that it says a honky person is the one who doesn't flee, to which he asks if a honky my person is strong. His brother tells him that a honky person is both strong and pure of heart as well, while Matakara looks at the creepy shadow in the pictures and asks about that. And he's told that the shadow is something that creeps in the hearts of those who are weak, but a honky person can never run, something that amuses Matakara. Mahoro looks at shirtless pictures of her brother Marito like a thirst goblin and fawns over him while eating her lunch when Arajine appears out of thin air and asks her if she wants to eat with him, to which she replies that she'd like to eat alone. Sensing the toxic light in her voice, he begins to explain that although he didn't want to fight against her brother, now her brother will be able to retire in peace. Then he asks her if she'd like to go out with him, but she leaves him hanging and leaves while Matakara comes over and asks to join him for lunch, at which point Arajine begins to shed premium tears about how he can't get Mahoro. While they have lunch, Matakara asks Arajine if he can have his brother's coming home party at his restaurant, to which Arajine says he can, making Matakara very happy as his brother wanted to stuff himself with some good food. Matakara later tells Kakeru and Kamayo, who both tell him that they will come, with Kamayo being a bit too jumpy. Matakara also asks Ken if he would come, and Ken waves a paper at him that says that he's attending the party. As Senya and Arajine walk, Senya dances around in excitement of seeing Matakara's older brother, to which Arajine tells him that although he's only met his older brother a couple of times, he's heard that he's stronger than even Ken, which gives Senya the kind of pressure that makes his soul lag, prompting him to say that the should merge together. This makes Arajine stop in his tracks as he asks Senya why he keeps wanting to merge with him, to which Senya, after thinking, replies that he would like to start a family with him, something that Arajine sheepishly refuses and protests against. Matakara is cleaning around the temple when he hears the sounds of someone getting beaten up, only to find that it is Akataru who's getting a thrashing from a couple of students for kicking him around like a kite. Seeing this, Matakara stops them by grabbing a hold of the belt and tells them that if they continue to beat him, they'll have to fight him, at which point they run away. Hutaru thanks him, and as Matakara turns to leave, he gets down on his knees and apologizes to him before saying that the fight with Arajine really made him realize some stuff about himself. He bootlicks about Arajine is so strong and almost felt like he's a honky person and how he wanted to be a honky person too, but gave up, to which Matakara replies that he too wanted to be a honky person and used to train with Arajine to attain that, but could never become as strong as Arajine. A surprised Akataru asks him how Arajine could be stronger than him despite training together, but then says that he's figured it out, sparking Matakara's curiosity, who asks him, and Akataru tells him that the temple has a secret. He then leaves before giving Matakara something concrete and talks to Ichiya about what he's doing as they both losers discuss how they harbor a grudge deep within against Ken. Arajine shows Matakara how he makes gyozu, but Matakara puts in too much filling, hence ruining it, which draws criticism from Arajine. Matakara tells him how he once tried making gyozu with his brother but failed as they got burnt. Yayako asks him about his brother and starts to simp over learning his age of 21 years, to which Arajine tells her to log out back to the kitchen. The next day, Matakara marks his calendar with his brother's arrival and goes to pick him up, while Yayako and the others set up the restaurant for his brother's arrival. Everybody comes in early to the restaurant and begins to help in the decorating as Yayako makes the food in anticipation of Matakara's brother. Even Ken brings some stuff to the party, and as they all wait, Matakara reaches the juvie but his brother doesn't show up. Later, someone comes out to tell him that his brother tried to break up a fight at the juvie but ended up getting stabbed with a low chance of survival, causing Matakara to drop his umbrella. He doesn't go to the Choo-Choo Chinese restaurant for the party, so everyone leaves, and Arajine is mad that Matakara didn't tell them that he's not coming. Hikaru and Komao get to know about Matakara's brother from his landlady when they try to find him, and the next day at school they grab hold of Arajine, who's busy simping for Mahoro again. They ask him if he knows where they can find Matakara since she's his best buddy, but he doesn't know, and they leave as he laments how he can't spend more time brown-nosing to Mahoro. Matakara sits alone in a park whining over his brother when he suddenly feels a shadow creeping up on him that makes him very fearful as he begins to run away from it like a wimp. He runs away and eventually finds Yayako, who he asks for Arajine, and she invited him into the house where he finds Arajine asleep, prompting him to smile at him. But as he looks at Arajine, he notices a mark on his head which he presses, and Senya appears out of nowhere, which scares Matakara's stupid head, and he runs away where he meets Akataru, who validates his fears about Arajine not being a true Honky person and faking his strength just to rely on something that's possessing him. Senya tells Arajine to go and console Matakara, and he goes to the temple to find Matakara, who tells him that he saw his monster, but that he knows that Arajine is strong on his own and not all his strength comes from Senya. But Arajine contradicts him by telling him that he was never strong to begin with and even abandoned him when he was being beaten up. Matakara goes lapdog mode with him and refuses to believe it, but Arajine rebuffs him by announcing his lack of interest in becoming a Honky person and leaves, at which point Akataru appears and gives Matakara a gun to shoot at the picture in the temple, which he does. The bullet ricochets and hits him, but he gets up again with the bullet embedded in him as he gets surrounded by smoke, which settles down to reveal his own monster. Akataru furiously confronts Ichiya for abandoning his body and transferring to Matakara, to which Ichiya coldly replies that he will always choose the stronger vessel and that Matakara has a kind of darkness in him that he doesn't have. This prompts Akataru to pick up the gun and fire it in his head in the hope of getting Ichiya back, but it doesn't fire, and Ichiya tells him that he has no use for such a wimpy host before going back into Matakara's body. Back at the school, everybody is concerned about Matakara as Arajine simps for Mahoro, who's just busy clowning over her brother's pictures on her phone. Kakeru says that Matakara was really looking forward to moving in with his brother, which makes Arajine stop and think about it as well. As Arajine works at his restaurant, Senya reprimands him for dealing so harshly with Matakara, but Arajine thinks that he has done the right thing as he was tired of Matakara being a big notorious clout chaser. Senya slaps Arajine at the back, trying to practice his swing as he goes flying, while Kakeru and Komao look for Matakara, who they find in his apartment trying to break stuff to get money. They try to console Matakara, and Komao even offers him gyozu, but Matakara puts them on silent completely and goes away with Kakeru, telling him to at least come to school tomorrow. Otomi goes to the club and asks for someone else, but the attendant tells him how Jasmine becomes a full-blown validation vacuum when he's gone, which makes him reconsider as he then asks for Jasmine and apologizes to her. Arajine is on his way to Matakara's place, as his own bath is not working and the only nearest public bath is there. As Senya asks him about Matakara, Arajine accidentally bumps into Matakara and says hi to him, but Matakara doesn't reply and runs away, which perplexes both Arajine and Senya. Arajine goes into the bath and Komao there, who aggressively scrubs his back, and then he meets Kakeru as well, and they talk about Matakara not coming to school. Arajine says that Matakara should be socially soft-blocked, but Kakeru thinks it's a bad idea. Mahoro brings in 2 cups of tea and puts one next to a life-size doll of Marito and starts to go all living off emotional handouts over him as the real Marito and Aota come into the room and discuss the death of Mitsukuni, who was once the leader of Minato but just dropped dead like that. Aota tells Marito that Matakara is actually Mitsukuni's younger brother, which shocks both Marito and Mahoro, letting out a gasp which makes Marito look for her with no luck. Matakara sits in the temple and gets his courage deleted from the system by the shadows that he feels are creeping up towards him, at which point Ichiya asks him what his problem is, and Matakara presses the seal to release Ichiya. Ichiya tells Matakara that the monster that he sees following him everywhere is actually his own weakness, and that he can free himself from it. He tells Matakara that the only way to get rid of the monster is to become the strongest. But Matakara says that he has already tried doing which, Ichiya gives the shrug treatment by saying that he never fully tried and never made it to the top by defeating everyone. This makes Matakara remember his fight with Ken, and he recalls to Ichiya that the guys all accepted him for who he was and became his friends, to which Ichiya retorts that friends are for the weak, and the only way that Matakara can ever free himself from the debilitating spinelessness is to defeat them, and especially Arajine, as he is Matakara's greatest weakness, which leaves Matakara in a dilemma. Mahoro approaches Arajine, who sheepishly thinks that she wants the gift stone he got for her, but she refused that and instead asks about Matakara, which makes Arajine jealous as he tells her to avoid his problems, but she tells him that unless he considers Matakara's feelings as well, she won't talk to him again. Ichiya tells Matakara that he is his only chance at a personality fix and that only he can save him from the monster, but in order to get through it, he needs to defeat Arajine as he has been lying and deceiving him, which makes Matakara angry at Arajine for betraying him and lying to him. As Arajine walks to the public bath, Senya teased him over Mahoro being more concerned about Matakara, which really annoys Arajine, who even dodges Senya's signature bottom slap this time. Senya tells him that he might even bump into Matakara, prompting him to ask Senya why he's such a support signaler about Matakara, to which he replies that seeing them brings back memories of his youth when he first met Ichiya while Ichiya was fighting and winning against a much bigger opponent. This made him admire Ichiya and join him in the quest to become Honky people as they fought each other and trained together, even naming each other Senya and Ichiya, but at the end something happened to Ichiya and it went to the bin. Senya says that he doesn't want this happening to Arajine as he needs someone to have his back while becoming a Honky person. As they talk about this, Matakara calls out to Arajine from a distance and asks him to fight him, which confuses the brain, lagged Arajine. But before he can make sense of the situation, Matakara attacks him and begins a kick barrage that sends Arajine flying away. Senya realizes that Ichiya has entered Matakara's body, giving him all that power, so he asks Arajine to merge, which they do, but Matakara kicks them away, and as he's about to deliver the final blow to Arajine, he realizes that Arajine is sitting and clenching his belly, not wanting to fight, so he stood midway and Arajine runs away to launch some stink missiles. Ichiya looks at this with disdain and thinks that this kindness makes Matakara soft and unable to be ruthlessly good. Arajine asks Senya what all that was about, but Senya disappears and doesn't come out. So Arajine takes the note given to him by Akataru and heads there to meet him, where Akataru tells him that Senya's true objective is to take over his body, which shocks Arajine. Back at the temple, Ichiya belittles Matakara by saying that he is a wimp like his brother who couldn't protect his family and wasn't even a true Honky person, which angers Matakara, who kicks at the monster near Ichiya to dissipate it away, as Ichiya tells him that the reason the ugly monster went away is because he showed strength and anger, which is important to win. Surprisingly, Arajine stands as Akataru tells him how Senya plans to take over his body, which will ultimately result in his own death. But Arajine refuses to believe that he has been publicly roasted by Senya, at which Akataru laughs like a mad clown on a sugar rush. He tells him to ask Senya himself and tell Matakara as well before it's too late. Saying this, Akataru goes away laughing like crazy into the darkness. At school, Arajine looks at Mahoro, really wanting to talk to her, but he remembers that she told him not to until he sorts out the Matakara mess, so he looks around for him. Hikaru and Komao also look for Matakara and eventually find him in the school. He tells them that they should go out to have some fun, to which they agree as Arajine watches from a window. They go to a game bar and Kakaru and Komao play a game on the consoles, trying to beat each other in the wake of Matakara's return. But Matakara has other plans as he tells them he'll get some drinks. He goes towards the bar but bumps into a guy who first gets angry at him, but looking at him closely gets scared without caring one bit. Matakara delivers a gut-crushing punch. His friends attempt to attack Matakara, but he beats up all of them, and as he goes out, Ichiya tells him that doing random guys won't mean much. So when Auta, Marito, and their group walk towards him, he decided to challenge Marito and attacks him outright, but Marito blocks his attack with relative ease. And as Matakara launches more attacks, Marito keeps dodging them and making a complete circus act out of Matakara, even threw in a live mic roast for flavor in between before kicking Matakara away. Matakara charges again, but is whooped away once again, so Ichiya tells him to retreat for now because he is not ready to face Marito at the moment, which he does so, as Marito makes fun of him for running away. Arajine tries to talk to Singer, but Singer doesn't come out. Instead, Yayako overhears him and comes into his room to ask who's taking over his body, as she thinks that this is something romantic, like how their parents met and courted, but he can't take the awkwardness anymore and tells her to scram. Ichiya tells Matakara at the temple how he needs to become stronger, and later as he walks past Tatsuto, Ichiya tells him to fight him, but Matakara dismisses him as a small fish. However, Ichiya persists. Matakara engages Tatsuto, which makes him angry over Matakara beating up his NG friend, so he berates Matakara and then punches him. But the punch has no effect, and Matakara returns the favor with a kick that gravity humbles Tatsuto. As Matakara is about to leave, Ichiya tells him to finish the job, but Matakara hesitates, prompting Ichiya to tell him to continue beating him by abandoning his emotions and being completely ruthless, something that Matakara ends up doing. Nagare is in a shop buying ice cream and hears some people talking about how Tatsuto is being folded and mopped across the floor like a rag doll. As soon as he hears this, he rushes out and yells Matakara's name with a blood-curdling intensity and attacks him head-on, and while Matakara counters his attacks, Nagare headbutts him really hard, which surprises even Matakara. Ichiya taunts Matakara by asking if he's gonna lose to a weakling like him now, something that angers Matakara, and he kicks Nagare with a renewed intensity, sending him flying away. Now Matakara proceeds to brutally kick and immobilize Nagare like a dog, and when Tatsuto tries to protect him, they whooped him so hard he became part of the pavement once again. Back at the school, everyone is talking about Matakara just beat the living crap out of Nagare and Tatsuto, which Arajine overhears and finds hard to believe about his once close friend. Tatsuto asks Nagare if he wants to go to the hospital, but he refuses, and asks him to go instead to get looked at which point Marito and Auta enter the room with food in their hands, which they give to Nagare. Marito, before leaving, tells Nagare that he has warned him to stay off Matakara as he is his opponent now, and that Nagare should eat and rest up now as they deal with the situation. Matakara floors some more people, and when one of them tells him that this is like him to be so vicious, he beats him up even more. Akataru and Kamau also arrive on scene and confront Matakara as to why he's fighting everyone, to which he coldly replies that he only wants to get stronger. They then tell him that Ken wants to see him right now, but Matakara tells them off by stating that he will save Ken for last, a statement that makes Kakeru trigger his it-quake at what Matakara has planned out. Just as they're talking, Marito makes an announcement through the school microphone, which can also be heard outside by all the students, and most importantly, Matakara. In the announcement, he informs Matakara to come to the field, which excites all the students, as they ditch class to see the fight between Marito and Matakara. Arajine stays in class, which makes the teacher really happy, and when he tells Arajine about the importance of time, Arajine suddenly remembers Akataru's warning that he should inform Matakara before it's too late, and he rushes out of class to Matakara. In the field outside, most people are cheering for Marito and think that he's going to win, even though Matakara beat up some stupid Kazuma boys. Belief that Mahoro enthusiastically reinforces by telling everyone that her brother is definitely going to win. Arajine bolts outside, skipping between driven on a mission in between people to get to the front line. He sees that the fight has already begun, with Matakara attacking Marito with a kick which Marito easily blocks. As Matakara launches more attacks at Marito, they are all blocked or dodged with ease, and Marito gives him a mighty good thrashing by kicking the life force out of him, while also toying with him by calling him a clout-chasing doggy. This angers Matakara, and he pulls out a dirty move by throwing into Marito's face and attacking him, but Marito counters with a kick to his face that sends him flying over to everybody's cheers and applause, while Kakeru, Kamau, and Arajine look worried at how the fight is going to turn out. Ichiya, at this point, is also disappointed and thinks that he won't be able to get his revenge with Matakara's weak bottom. And just as he's about to leave, Matakara mumbles that he won't be afraid of the monster anymore and that he wants to win at all costs. Marito moves in for the finishing move, and Ichiya lends his power to Matakara, who proceeds to block and kick Marito into orbit before viciously kicking him around like a bird of prey. Seeing this, Mahoro collapses as Matakara goes in to finish over Marito, who eventually is immobilized, with the thrashing leaving everyone gasping and surprised, including Arajine, who later demands Tenya to come out and explain, prompting him to finally appear. After the war broke out, the authorities needed to keep the Honky people clamped down and so started to suppress those claiming to become Honky people. During that time, Senya and Ichiya were already fierce rivals. In one of their sparring sessions, Ichiya once again came out on top, leaving Senya flat on the ground. But when Senya calmly admits that he was weaker, this pisses off Ichiya, who says that he's being mocked. Ichiya tells Senya that he wants a serious fight, but Senya tells him that they both will clock out if that happens, although Ichiya still doesn't listen, and they end up fighting each other seriously, with Ichiya wounding Senya's chest and Senya punching him, which prompts Ichiya to knock him out with a kick, but Ichiya still thinks he's being toyed with before both of them are shot by authorities. Arajine is pissed off that Senya just wanted to use his body like a rag doll to settle his score with Ichiya and asks him to leave, which Senya complies with after telling him that he had a great time with him. Matakara beats up a guy, and as he's walking back, he's approached by Arajine, who tells him that Ichiya intends on taking over his body, and if he completely takes over Matakara's mind, he will die. But Matakara doesn't care about dying as long as Laser Bottom is stronger than Arajine and can beat him. Ichiya asks him to fight Arajine, but he tells him to take a hike as he's got something else to do first, while Komao and two other idiots run around town to Aota, who angrily smacks the table, scaring the life out of them. Matakara goes to Ken's place and beats up two of his men when he's confronted by Kakeru, who grabs him and asks him what he's doing after he smacks away Komao. Matakara says that he wants to fight Ken one-on-one and gives the location and time to Ken, who agrees. Arajine is serving food at his restaurant and gives the wrong order to a customer when Ken comes in. Yayako, the restaurant wench, starts to go all auntie over him, after which Arajine goes out to talk to Ken. Mahoro stands by her brother's side at the hospital where he lies injured, and Aota is also there with her trying to console her. As Kakeru and Komao wait for the fight to begin, Kakeru has a flashback of the time that he first joined the academy and met Komao. They hear Matakara challenge Ken to fight him, and during the fight he tries his best to defeat Ken, but Ken is way too strong and ends the fight with one smack. All of this, however, makes Kakeru a most closeted fangirl over Matakara, who had the guts to challenge Ken, and offers Matakara a juice while refusing to show his admiration openly. Kakeru sends Komao to go and fetch Arajine, who he says is Matakara's best friend and that Matakara might listen to him. At the hospital, Tatsuto and Sare are also there without them. On hearing that Marito has still not woken up even after 3 days, gets angry and vows to teach Matakara a lesson. He tries to leave, but a Harmonia Nazare stops him and starts to pound his chest while saying that he's in no condition to fight. Aota also steps in and pats both of them on the back, telling them that he needs them to protect their own people, to which they both sheepishly agree. Kakeru bumps into Matakara and stops him from going any further to fight Ken as he's afraid that he might get hurt. Kakeru attacks Matakara, who dodges all of his attacks before putting down Kakeru like a goat with a kick. And as Kakeru tries to get up, Matakara viciously kicks him like a dog. Kakeru makes a last-ditch effort and grabs a hold of Matakara's ankle, which angers him, and he begins to kick Kakeru, who falls back unconscious, and Matakara moves ahead without much remorse. Komao goes to the restaurant and finds Arajine asking him to come to the fight between Matakara and Ken, but Arajine refuses to go. However, on Kamao's reminder that he is Matakara's friend, he finally decides to go. Everyone is gathered at the beach where Matakara and Ken get ready to fight, and one of Ken's NPC doormats explains that Matakara's parents ditched him when he was very young, leaving only his brother to look after him. So when his brother died, Matakara lost the last uncle he had in the world, and in the process also lost himself. Matakara begins the fight by attacking Ken. But Ken dodges most of his moves, although Matakara is able to land one, which makes him confident because he remembers that he is a different person now than when he faced Ken before. Ken, however, punches Matakara, sending the air flying out of his lungs at him, and proceeds to give Matakara a thrashing, which prompts him to ask Ichiya to give him power. Confused with Ichiya's power, Matakara deflects Ken's attack and begins to kick Ken around, with Ken now being on the receiving end, although he still manages to hold his own, but only defends instead of attacking, as he remembers he made a promise to Matakara's brother to look after him if something were to happen to him. Matakara, on seeing that Ken is losing to him, takes off his jacket and throws it on the floor for all to see, while thinking that now he can finally deal with Arajine's sorry bottom. Arajine thinks about what Ken told him outside the restaurant about facing Matakara himself if push comes to shove, and when Arajine showed reluctance in his ability to defeat Matakara, Ken held his hand and told him he believes in him. This prompts Arajine to once again go to the temple, where he shoots himself in the head with the gun, and As the bullet embeds in his head, Senya comes out and introduces himself as a wretched Majin, upon which Arajine tells him that he wants to fuse with him. The school kids mock Matakara, saying he is always at the temple to train every day, which a young Arajine overhears and is impressed by, so he follows Matakara to the temple and sees that he is actually training very hard. While he is secretly Matakara cuts off the rope to reveal a huge log moving towards him, Arajine to warn his stupid acquaintance as the log hits and throws aside Matakara. Arajine asks him how he could kick the log, to which Matakara replies, person, which means never running away. This impresses Arajine, who says that he will join Matakara in his training, so they both begin training together with Matakara leading and Arajine gradually catching up to him. They both become very good friends and even stamp each other's names on their palms to reinforce their friendship. Arajine confronts Senya at the temple and asks him to merge with him. Senya asks him why he changed his mind, as merging could send him to his maker, but Arajine angrily replies that he won't die, but he has to make Matakara's wake up. Yayako watches drama and, when the main character dies, she clearly runs into Arajine's room to use him as an emotional crush, but not finding him there, she thinks that he is at a sleepover with a girl. Two boys are walking and they notice the sky turning bloody gray and say that it looks pretty bad, when suddenly they see Matakara on his knees undergoing a mid-transformation, so they run away from him as Ichiya takes complete control of Matakara's body. Kamau tries to unsuccessfully bandage Akataru, who has told Kamau that his injuries are from some goons beating him and not Auda and his friends go to Arajine's house as they think that he might know about Matakara, but find from Yayako as she tells them that he has gone to fight that once-in-a-lifetime bedroom gymnastics battle. Mahoro offers some kebabs to her brother, who still hasn't woken up in the hospital. She goes out for a while and overhears the nurses talking about a gorilla being admitted. When Ken and Marito are kept in the same room together, Ken begins to work out even in restraining straps, and Mahoro calls out his name, which Marito also overhears, prompting him to wake up from the coma. Arajine and Matakara meet each other outside the temple, with Senya telling Arajine that Ichiya has completely taken over Matakara and it's not him anymore. Arajine merges with him, which leads to a lot of uncomfortable noises from Arajine as he gives control of his body to Senya. Senya takes control and Ichiya gets ready for the fight, with it looking like it's Senya and Ichiya who are fighting instead of Arajine and Matakara. Ichiya attacks Senya with his kick barrage, which Senya dodges to attack with his own punch barrage, but Ichiya is able to deflect that and he kicks Senya to knock the wind out of him. Senya and Ichiya continue their fight as they both attack each other, with Ichiya slowly gaining the upper hand, and Senya resumes his bottom status. This angers Ichiya even more, who thinks that Senya is holding back like before, and even says that he knew that Senya was afraid to surpass him, and he was disappointed that he couldn't make Senya Honky. Senya so there was no way that he could win from him or surpass him, and he asks Ichiya why he risked his life to fight him back. Then, to which Ichiya replies that he was sick from an illness and was slowly uninstalling from reality, so he decided that he would like to go permanent nighty by Senya's hand, but that didn't come out to be, so they must fight now. Senya hesitates and thinks he can't win, which prompts Arajine to tell him to fight, and after a pep talk, Senya decides to fight with his full power and attack Ichiya, who is happy that Senya is completely serious now. They both fight and Senya now gains the upper hand as he smacks Ichiya, leaving a mark on his body from the lunge, which only causes Ichiya to try harder. Has the upper hand, and finally he is able to defeat Ichiya by knocking him down, and Ichiya accepts defeat by saying that he's glad he fought a true Honky person. Just as he says this, Matakara suddenly takes control and absorbs Ichiya, saying that now he will defeat Arajine, as he proceeds to kick Arajine around, who is already running on fumes. Arajine wonders if he's gonna live with the bugs now, but then remembers all his friends and family, and finally Mahoro, which makes him determined that he's not gonna die a virgin, and he wakes up to fight Matakara. Karu and Komayo also reach the temple, while Nagare, Uto, and the others are also there. Senya warns Arajine that Matakara is now very powerful after absorbing Ichiya, and Arajine tries to deflect his moves but gets beat up by him. He asks Matakara why he needs to be the strongest, to which he replies that if he's the strongest, his wimpy bottom won't need anyone else, which makes Arajine realize that Matakara is scared of being alone and always has been since they were kids. He also realizes that he has been running away from Matakara, which gives him determination to stand his ground and stop running from both himself and Matakara. Matakara kicks Arajine, but Arajine takes the kick head-on instead of flinching, and then delivers a powerful punch to Matakara, knocking out the monster that he's become and saving the friend in him that he knows. This makes Arajine a true Honky, which even Senya acknowledges as he tells Arajine how he has helped him understand what being a true Honky is. When Matakara wakes up, Arajine tells him that he won't be hugging air again as all their friends call out his name and come towards them, and Arajine stamps Matakara's hand with his own blood. As Arajine wakes up, he contemplates how he's going to make Mahoro weak in the knees before going to the beach and thinking about saying he left without a proper goodbye.